This is part two of my interview with Leon Southgate talking about Qi and Wilhelm Reich's discovery of Orgone energy. In this part of the section, we touch more on the deep state. We get right into acupuncture and talk a little bit about the different types, styles of acupuncture, its connection, how it kind of came about, how it got, how the evolution of the medicine changed through the dynasties, this kind of things, different techniques, his take on using acupuncture. We touch more on the acupuncture in comparison to Orgone. We also look into the sinew channels a little bit in connection to the Wei Qi and the ether drift, and how those connection with Taoist cosmology. We talk a little bit about the difference between the Orgone box and the Orgone blanket. Leon had a very interesting take on that, which I actually hadn't heard of. We talk about the three types of Orgone energy. We also get right more into the body intelligence again, how acupuncture breaks up door in the body. We touch on James Demeo's work in Sahara Asia and his cloudbuster work. We also talk about a little bit about Leon's experience being a nurse in relation to the AZT deaths in the 90s with his nursing experience, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's a pretty long-winded interview. It's so I've divided this up into another hour segment, and it's a pretty much open for discussion type talk. So sit back and enjoy. It's interesting talk. Hope you enjoy.
Sorry,
Hi.
Leon, I just dropped out.
Yeah, it might be because we were talking about pedophiles, I think.
Yeah,
and
isn't
people
it
in power.
interesting? Yeah, the key word, boom, comes on, and
Yeah.
but very, very sad to see. But what was I going to say? I was going to say something about Reich, and I mean, his book, you probably read it, Listen, Little Man.
Yeah.
I think analyzes the type of creature we're dealing with, and so I'm actually surprised I can still practice acupuncture here actually after all this. I'm very, very surprised with the level they took it to. I'm surprised I can still do it.
They seem to have maybe they've had their fingers burnt in the past, because I think the deep state have got histories, like real histories, rather than the fake ones we're given, or the semi-fake ones. But they'll have known the Chinese Communist Party tried to wipe out traditional medicine, and they couldn't. So if the CCP can't do it, then, and they probably think it'd be counterproductive. Like if they tried to stop Chinese acupuncture, then some of the people now who are not aware of the deeper undercurrents would start to think, maybe get suspicious.
And that's the other thing I think a lot of people don't realize about the current Chinese medical system, the one you learn at uni, that was voted in by the communists.
Yeah, that's right.
And the evolution of the medicines actually changed through the dynasties. And so that's why I did a lot of digging, into the classical acupuncture side of things, and it gave me a lot of deeper understanding, particularly of those sinew, low and divergent channels. Although primarily I mainly do low channel treatments because of my specific interest in relation to trauma and the psycho-emotional side of things. And I think it's but I think any kind of body work I think you don't really need to get too fancy with everything. The main thing is a practitioner. Can you read the person sitting in front of you, or can't you?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
understand how to
Mm,
tweak a few things for them, because sometimes it can be just saying that one word that can open up their mind to a different way of thinking about something, or
mm,
they can experience it through the body and the treatment.
mm.
It's
Yeah.
amazing how it all plays out, but that evolution of the medicine, the take you learn at uni, yeah, is very, and they're very emphasis on the acupuncture working on the nervous system, which, in ancient Chinese
Mm.
anatomy, there was none.
Yeah, the Northern College of Acupuncture where I trained was quite good in giving a basic overview. They really, because the Chinese communists, that they realized they couldn't get rid of traditional medicine, so they
Mm,
tried to systematize it instead,
mm,
which did the world a favor in a way, in that, like, it although they kind of did away with some of the aspects of Chinese medicine, but
mm,
they systematized the main aspects into one system. So you can, if you, and they call that TCM, like
mm,
traditional Chinese medicine. But the school I went to, like, followed that system pretty rigidly, and then
mm.
as a kind of foundation, and then you could go off in different directions after. But the first couple of years, particularly of the college's training, was really based around. I think they used Giovanni Macchioscia's kind of framework here
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot. Seems quite clear.
yeah. He
Um,
was, he was. I think we used those texts too.
yeah.
But I think, at the time there wasn't much else around. I think the last 5 years,
Mm,
6 years, there's a lot of stuff being that's come out in terms of, I guess, Jeffrey
yeah.
Ewan stuff, and he's a Taoist priest, so they don't write
Mm,
books. So it's some of his students that have written these advanced acupuncture manuals, so to
mm,
speak. And then, of course, there's the Tung acupuncture, which is very famous. Tung, he was a famous practitioner in China and then fled to Taiwan when
mm,
the communists came, because they were after him,
yeah.
and he started,
Mm,
and that's that lineage. And I use that primarily in clinic. I also use the abdominal bagua stuff, which I learned
yeah.
when, with the turtle shape. I found that, and there's a guy
Is
in
that?
UK who does that.
Mm,
An Irish guy, Dave Shipsey, I think. But
right. Yeah. Is
but
that
I,
like the Hara diagnosis?
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
similar to that, and they use this
Mm,
turtle shape in relation
yeah.
to the Fushi,
Mm,
um, the I Ching and the Bagua stuff. And
yeah.
I learned that after I did my internship in China. I went up to northern China and I studied it with a guy in Beijing for a few months.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
found that I still do some of that quite regularly. And I
Mm,
primarily teach that a little bit here too. People seem to be very interested in that because it's a very
mm,
superficial way of doing it. It doesn't require, some of the tung stuff can be
mm,
quite deep. A lot of people don't like those very strong sensations, especially if they've had,
mm,
I've noticed people who've been, seriously armored or had a lot of trauma really
mm,
can't handle too strong a treatment. And some of
yeah. Mm,
the
yeah.
Bagua
That.
stuff's a little more
Mm,
superficial. They tend to, and it's something about the hara that's very deeply healing. And I
mm,
guess, yeah.
mm, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Because the Chinese and Asian cultures, they tend to, like, have be able to take very deep massage
Yeah.
and very strong sensations, whereas,
Mm.
like, Westerners are not used to strong, um, like, therapeutic sensations generally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Though
that's true.
me and my ex-wife, we both tend to be quite on the strong side of
Mm.
sensation-wise acupuncture. So over the years of a number of people have fainted. Or, uh,
Right.
where
Yeah.
we get results, but it's quite strong. But
Yeah, I think me too. I could be more heavy-handed, and I think over the years I just kind of, now that I know a few different techniques or modalities, I tend to just have my patients, some come for the Bagua, the other the Tung stuff, and
yeah,
but mostly I'm so interested in just getting results. So my primary go, I think because of this, the whole COVID scenario and the level of blood stasis going on in people from these things that they've been going so hard with, that I found the bleeding. I mean, I've had people coming into clinic with chronic like headaches for 2, 3, 4 days and haven't even been able to drive. Their parents have been driving them in and stuff. All the kids are driving the parents in, and I found that the bleeding's been my go, and it, the headaches go within 3 to 5 minutes.
Gosh. And is that Tung that has elucidated the bleeding aspects? Because I want to look into that.
I would get there's a very good book by you'll like this one, by Henry McCann, and it's called Pricking the Vessels.
Henry, how do you spell McCann?
I think it's McCann.
Right, Henry, Henry McCann, as we call it, and Pricking the Vessels.
Pricking the Vessels. That's right. One of the best ones.
Yeah, I'll look that up.
Really good. I can actually send you my notes actually from the seminar I did. I did a seminar on it. I'll have all the notes in there. I'll just email them to you.
Oh, that'd be good, because I've got one person who, I mean, he's literally a walking miracle. This guy, that he's alive.
Yeah.
I mean, he's So I'd like to use that for to try and release some deep stuff with him in a way that he can handle without sort of it.
And I use the tattoo piercing needles they use for body piercing. I've got them on my notes. You'll see what I mean. And there's a technique to do. You just practice it on yourself. Once you get it down, whoa, it's great. People hardly feel it, and then it's really I've found it. I mean, like Dr. Young, in his book, one of Tung's books, he was one of Tung's disciples back in the day. He said, the real magic acupuncture is in the bloodletting, the piercing needle. Because a lot of acupuncture theory has gone I think I heard it's kind of been they elevated herbal theory and the herbal, because some of the points you use almost like herbs, absolutely, like Zhang Fu theory and things like this. And I think that's I think that's for a reason. I think the commies did that to get the body connection away. There's because herbs, you're not focused on the body. I mean, you are, but it's not like you're not physically working on it.
That's interesting, because there was there's that very I've never been able to get my head around it fully. There's that there was a guy, is it Dr. Tan? He goes back to the original meridian theory. He only uses meridian theory for his treatments, and so he'll use points on one channel to balance another channel. And I mean, and that is just so sophisticated. I mean, that would be like a 3 or 4 year study just in itself.
I mean, and I think a lot of that stems from he had a very good knowledge of Chinese. I never did any of his courses, but I think his is kind of maybe an extension of Tung. I like Tung a little bit better, but I think he understood Bazi, Chinese astrology, and Bagua really well, and you connection to the orally clock from the meridian point of view, and I what I really liked about Tung's acupuncture, which I noticed a lot in clinic, a lot of people are feeling pain, but not on the meridians, in between channels.
Yeah.
And a lot of Tung's stuff, he needles in between channels.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
because you do have channel areas.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I've noticed I get a problem, a little, like a skin problem between the gallbladder and the stomach channel, and it's always in that area in between the two. So it's kind of controlled by the surface area between those two channels.
Yeah, and yeah, getting back to the meridian thing, and then Tung, he used to always do that guiding and pulling type stuff. So you needle the opposite side, and then you pull the energy around in through source point or one of the transporting points. Yeah, I mean, that to me, when I learned this, and I've done so much of it since, I don't know, 2013. Wow, it's really cool. It really is really different, and you don't need to get so much into pulse. I mean, I always practice pulse because I really like doing it, but you don't need to know it to do this stuff. You just need to really understand what's going on with someone, and yeah, it's really cool.
And sometimes the pulse is just too complicated to read. Like you have to do a few treatments before the pulse settles down enough to see what's going on in it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I've done a lot of the classical pulse training, and I realize sometimes, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, actually. Sometimes, well, firstly, people lie. One good thing about the pulse is people lie, or they don't know how to communicate actually what they're feeling. And I think sometimes the pulse, you go, oh, bang, now I know where to go with this.
Yeah.
That's one of the really cool things about it. But I think you're right, too. I think sometimes it takes you a while to suss out. You need to do a few treatments, and then you tune into it, and then you go, oh, now I know what the problem is.
Yeah. Well, the acupuncture simplifies the pulse.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm not I'm kind of a frustrated academic, really, because I never knew what I wanted to do until I was 30. Like I started off with music, and then odd jobs, and then nursing, and then I fell into acupuncture, really, as an escape from nursing, because I was fed up of being a nurse. So I thought, I'll train as an acupuncturist. I didn't even really consider much about it. I just decided on a whim, virtually. And it wasn't until I did the research module of the acupuncture course, the extra module, that I really found something that I love in itself. And I've just remembered it's a kind of side thing, but I've always found it a bit weird. But that's the only thing I was naturally good at, is the pulse diagnosis. I think it's because I'm unusual in my senses. Like most people are visual or auditory, but I'm tactile, then auditory, then visual. And so I'm naturally good at pulses, and it was the only thing I was naturally good at. I mean, I really had to work to learn the points, because I'm not naturally an exact person, and if it wasn't for my ex mentoring me, I'd have struggled. So, and the community, to any aspiring acupuncturists out there, community clinics are a great way to get going, because you're treating 2 or 3 people an hour rather than one, and you're treating more working class people, and which is good because you see a wider variety of things.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So it really, doing a community clinic and having the mentoring probably taught me as much as being in college. But
yeah, I don't think you learn. Yeah, I think it's the best way. It's like it's like anything. With my acupuncture too, I think some of the best learning experiences I had probably in terms of was doing the Sacred Heart Mission stuff, which is I did volunteer work just half a day a week.
Yeah.
And you know, you saw deeply traumatized people, like, you know, have gone through some real stuff, and a whole mixed bag of things, you know, would come through the door. But you got to really see the effects of things, because those people, the cool thing about working on those people is firstly they've gone through that intense, a lot of them were sexually abused and things like this. These are the people I was dealing with. And so they don't trust anyone, and they can really read what's bullshit and what isn't. So you know, when they came to see me and they got result, they were like, wow, man, I want to see this guy, you know. And it really, so you really knew you were doing something legit for these people, you know. And that's what
and there's no there's no kind of messing around or politeness. That is like sort of I remember being in the detox clinic or the rehab thing, and a lot of people there, it's almost entirely trauma and abuse, really. That people don't get addicted to drugs for fun. They deal it to deal with trauma. And but there was this one really kind of this girl, and she was like, there's no way your acupuncture is going to work. I think it's rubbish. And then the other resident said to her, well, we know it works because we had it last week, and Leon does a really strong treatment. We bet you he can knock you out with the acupuncture. And she said no. So and it was thanks to my ex again that I developed this set of points. But basically it's a set of 20 or 30 points that just it's like very strong. It's like downing 12 pints. And I did this set of points on her, and she was out for the count. And the whole evening she was totally chilled. And she was first in line the next week.
And I think, you know, in correlation with the incredible calming effect from acupuncture, I mean, in relation to my experience of being in the Orgone box, and I've noticed people who I've put in the Orgone box as well say how calm they feel. You know, it's how to explain that? I mean, and I found that the interesting thing when I was doing one of Jeffrey Yun's workshops, this Taoist guy, right? He's from New York, but I'm trying to find. I've got these so many. I bought quite a few. They're expensive, right? These lectures he did, and he mentioned Reich in one of the, and I'm trying to find. I'm thinking, which one was it in? I'm pretty sure it was the Sinew Channel one, but I can't find the exact because the Sinew channels, they work in that. For doing Sinew channel treatment, so to speak, it's all palpation. You put the needle in and you twist. So it's all about the spiral motion, right? And he was saying the reason the needle has the copper head like this, the spiral motion, because that's the way Wei Chi's moving through the cosmos. And then it made me realize with Reich's work in terms of the either drift or the spiral motion. And I just thought, wow, this is fascinating. So the needle's just like pulling it in from the atmosphere.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the cloudbuster, and the orgone accumulator are all related, because they're once the needle's in the point, it's a human orgone accumulator,
Yeah.
and it can also act as a doorbuster, or it's a self-regulating doorbuster stroke cloudbuster stroke accumulator. And it's very clever the way it does it, because like sometimes it will accumulate and sometimes it will disperse, and it self-regulates itself, which is another theory of Reich's that's had a huge impact around, well, that started even as far as education, because his ideas on self-regulation started the free school movement in the UK,
Yeah,
and that
right.
spread all over the world. And with Reich's friend who started the school in southern England, Summerhill School.
Yeah.
But yeah, the have you noticed that the difference between different types of, like, because I've noticed the orgone cabinets seem to boost Wei Qi more, and the blankets seem to go into the channels a bit more. And
That's interesting you say that. I haven't been in a blanket for so long. Mostly I've just been sinking into the box. I just go and sit in there sometimes.
You have a full-size cabinet, do you?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I
me and
do
my
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and my dad and I, we made one, and
Yeah.
and sometimes, I can only be in there for 5 minutes, it's that strong. Thinking,
Yeah.
it's amazing how the energy of it changes. I mean, I just keep a little bucket of water in there to attract it. The Orgone, we're closer to the ocean, but some days, it's not really, and then other days, man, 5 minutes, like, whoa, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really know when you need to get out,
Yeah.
But that's an interesting point. I'll try and jump in the blanket and try and see if I can, because I'm pretty sensitive with my body, what I can feel with this stuff. So this is why I resonate with it so much. But
I found the cabinet, because you're not actually in contact with the orgone accumulator.
Yeah.
It kind of affects your outer qi levels more.
Yeah, right.
So I think it boosts your Wei Qi more than a blanket, which is actually kind of almost on your skin.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's interesting because like my ex-wife said with her headaches when she was in there, it's wrapped up, she's born, but I don't think she's ever been in the box. But it's incredible. Like it's just something so basic. And something so basic, and how that's not even it's not even how he's been so written off, just in terms of what he's discovered, is just incredible. But the powers that be, I guess they all they just well, they're just creatures. I bet you they're using all this stuff for themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
we
why
live
we'll
in
be
a
going.
yeah, we live in a complete make-believe world, because
Yeah.
the Victorians knew that ether existed, and they wrote ether out about 1920 with fake. The Michelson and Morley experiments don't stand. That's one of the great contributions Demeo made, is he went through all Miller's stuff. Dayton Miller's a student of Michelson's. And
I haven't read that book of his yet, actually. My dad has it. I haven't. Yeah.
It's amazing that there's a good article on his website. If you put into a search engine James Demeo, Dayton Miller, Dayton, article, or look through orgonelab.org, his website, still up and running. There's a long article on. I think it might have been in the Heretic's Notebook, an article based on the website article.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll check it out. I haven't looked at that for a while. Yeah.
but he goes through how they covered up the true results of the ether experiment, and then you got a whole edifice of physics built on top of a fake reality that there is no ether. And then we've got fake theories on energy production, because we've taken, it's like having a bathtub and saying, well, we're going to fill it up with water, but there's no water. There's
Yeah.
The water doesn't exist. I mean, that's kind of
Everything's becoming fake now, isn't it? I even seen some crap going on. The people saying birds are fake and space is fake, and yeah, it's getting yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a rebirth of the Hindu thing, because there's been a Hindu and a kind of argument in India about it is, I think what would you call it, Maya, whether whether this reality is real,
everything's illusion,
whether everything's illusion, and that kind of has been reborn as this kind of simulation hypothesis and holographic reality thing, but on a kind of, I think the fakeness in the mainstream has gone to extreme levels. Like, it started off on a small level in way back. I mean, they knew, I'm not sure if it was concurrent with World War One, or I'm not sure of the exact date, whether it was definitely before World War Two. And it might have been around about World War One or before, but that's how around about that period, 1900 to 1930, the American government has known free energy exists for absolute certainty.
Yeah.
With Henry Moray, even Lenin knew about it, because my dad, as well as being a psychotherapist, he's got he was a kind of Trotskyist in his time.
Right.
He became a bit more kind of agnostic towards that, and later on in life. But he had a complete works of Lenin's philosophical works in his shelves, and I went through one that my dad's notated, and Lenin knew about a physicist who got banned in the States because Henry Moray built a radio, like Reich's Orogne experiments, where he put some radioactive material into an Orgone accumulator.
Yeah.
Henry Moray built a kind of radioactive radio set that you could tune into the environment and download electricity direct from the sky, but a bit like what Tesla did without the radioactivity.
Yeah.
And this thing was widely known about by like dozens of lawyers and high-ranking people in the area, and was well documented. So you could light up a string of devices with his crystal radio set. And one of the physicists who Henry Moray got a lot of information from, it was something about the evolution of the atom, or the molecule, and or the something about the electron. Well, Lenin was aware of this book. So right back in, and then they banned it right across all the libraries in the States. So they're 100 years ahead of us. It's just that only now it's gone into the mainstream that our reality is a fake. They've not been able to. Well, by that I'm not talking simulation theory, but just the scientific realities behind that there's an ether, that you can create as much energy as you want just by tapping into it in the universe, that there's a biological energy, that mind isn't constrained to the body or the brain. All those basic aspects of reality can't be hidden anymore. That everyone's aware that, well, a lot of people are aware that that's been covered up, but that's been going on for over 100 years. Like all this stuff with 5G now, that they've known that radio waves are poisonous to organisms since about 1890. I mean, people have been getting progressively sicker from electromagnetic pollution, so literally since 1890. So 130 years later, it's now in the mainstream. But
I mean, I remember Steiner called it out, didn't he, back in the day, about radio waves and 100%. And it's just everything is labeled there. You're a conspiracy. I mean, there's some people who are so sensitive to electromagnetic pollution that they can't even be in the city. You know, there's people who get extremely ill from these kind of things. And I'm for one, definitely I'm sensitive to it for sure. And there's a lot of people. I think now it's not so laughed at as what it was. I think people are becoming, I mean, I think even in Scandinavia, right? I mean, it's in Australia, it's like they'll just throw up mobile phone towers everywhere. They couldn't care less, right? But in Scandinavia, right, it's a health that kids aren't even allowed to have Wi-Fi at school because of the way it alters the cells.
I
mean, they're not allowed to have it. It's a health hazard. Whereas in Australia here, it's like, go for it. You know, we'll whack on we'll whack on 3 mobile towers on the school property, you know.
It's I can imagine. It's a bit like that in England, but there is awareness in the public. I mean, that there's a lot of pushback from people sort of towards councils and that, but the councils themselves are like, oh, just stick a 5G tower near your school, that's fine. And put as much Wi-Fi as you possibly can in the schools. Like my son's school, I'm get electro symptoms. I can just about tolerate being in a semi-urban area where I live, but I have to do a lot to be able to do that, because I got sensitized by a neighbour's smart meters. But I knew I once spoke with a schools inspector, and in I won't say the area because it would give her away a bit. She's retired now, but they put in Wi-Fi throughout the schools for a certain age group in that area, and she all at once. And she noticed the following months after the Wi-Fi was put in, the behaviour just dropped, and the learning dropped, and it's definitely a neurological and cellular toxin. Most
100%.
And they've been really sneaky about it. They're just sneakily increasing. They're boiling the frog in people's houses. Like they're making. The average house now is so toxic with smart TVs and super strong Wi-Fi. I mean, the Wi-Fi in most people's houses is giving, if they got a modern Wi-Fi unit, it's giving out at the bottom end of 5G, the 5G frequencies, because it has two wave bands. like a 5, and the second waveband isn't even used hardly. So most devices don't connect on that wavelength. So it's literally been put there just to fry people, really.
Yeah, just getting microwaved out of existence.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I mean, and speaking of Mordor or door, I mean, I guess, you know, the Wi-Fi frequency is door. Would you agree with that? Or do you think door is more, how would you describe door?
No, I do agree with that, though. It's got it's one step back from door. In the Reich elucidated pre-atomic and post-atomic energies. So you've got energies that depend on particles, and you've got energies that are prior to particles, like orgone and chi and ether, the underlying medium from which particles arise. So with radio waves, you've got biologically hostile particles being saturated in an area, and then the organism reacts to that by shutting down. And it can also it will create door, because the hostile post particle energy field, or the electricity in the air, the radio waves in the air, will shut down the person's chi flow, and then that chi flow will become doorish. Because when there's 3 types of orgone that most people are only aware of 2, but there's actually 3. There's chi in its natural, or chi or orgone in its natural flowing state. And in its flowing state, what the Chinese would call chi, in a healthy state.
Yeah.
And then when that healthy orgone stagnates, like because of the radio waves stressing the organism, or literally attacking the orgone directly in the air, the chi then, or orgone, becomes door, stuck thing. And then you've also got excited orgone, which is Orogne, which Reich found when he like when you can create it emotionally too, like if in the sexual or in heightened emotions, or running, or activity, mechanical activity, electrical activity can create it too. But activity seems to be the easiest way to create it. So you've got excited orgone, which is Orogne, you've got dead orgone, which is door, and you've got free-flowing orgone, which like chi, and the radio waves interact with the orgone to create the door.
Yeah, okay.
So it is kind of the same thing, but one step away. So because
and James Demeo in his work in Sahara Asia and things like this, with the desert stricken regions, were considered to be full of door, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he had the cloudbuster, which can start to move. That's the way the cloudbuster works in the desert. Is it the door is really flat over the desert, and then you got a cloudbuster aiming at the door, and then the orgone then contracts and creates spaces and starts to move, and you get a healthy environment then starting, because once the solid stuck door,
it's kind of like it's holding,
then it starts to move, and then it brings in flows of water from nearby oceans, and then you get clouds, and although the orgone can create water directly, but and then Yeah. So
it's fascinating.
and
I
acupuncture
found,
works in the same way. Like
yeah,
acupuncture breaks up the door in the body.
breaks
But
up the door in the
acupuncture is
body.
so sophisticated because it works.
Yeah.
All of the techniques that Reich discovered, acupuncture has a counterexample. Not a counterexample, has an example that works, that uses that process, and often in an automated way, which is or a self-regulating way.
Yeah, that's really, yeah, that's great actually. That's really well put, because yeah, it's interesting, and just how that energies in those areas of the world, how they create that barbarous, hardened, sadistic, brutal type of character.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
it's just amazing.
mm.
I found
And
that
that,
fascinating, and I think anyone, you know, I've noticed a few people in clinic, and they're interested in being sex therapists and sexuality, but I think, wow, if you don't understand these concepts, wow,
yeah,
I mean, this is the real root of the trauma of the human race, really.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
and I think DeMeo's work was,
mm,
wow, man. I mean, it's such a shame I mean, that book should be
mm,
bloody everywhere, really. I
yeah,
mean, and
yeah.
I
It's
know he
amazing.
was struggling to sell it, I think. I mean, I remember he was selling Sahara Asia dirt
Mm,
cheap.
mm,
And I
yeah,
was just reading through that work. I'm thinking, this is just a magnum opus, you know, like it's,
mm,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
Anyone really interested
Mm,
in healing needs to really understand this work.
yeah.
Yeah.
Saharasia is an
Mm.
amazing book. I think I've
Yeah.
still got a spare copy if someone wants one and mail it. But the because I had a box of them for the UK.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean he traces back the core of the human condition, really, that
Mm.
in trauma, like we're the elite that can, well, I won't call them the elite, whatever secret groups try and influence society, that they wouldn't be able to do it unless mankind was traumatized, and that
Absolutely.
trauma
Absolutely.
and that trauma comes from Demeo's documented how that trauma first arose in this historical epoch and then
Mm.
spread out across the world. So yeah, it is. I mean, this guy who's discovered patterns in history.
Yeah.
Well, been watching recently, he recognizes the same thing as Demeo, but I don't know if he's aware of Demeo's work. I'll have to ask him.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and he, but there was a matriarchal that how that there was a matriarchal phase to human existence that turned into patriarchy in a very bloody way and traumatized the whole planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And gradually, in flows of people going out from the traumatized areas to other areas.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's deep work. I mean, and you can, yeah, it's just incredible how, I mean, we'll look at the world now where everything to do with sexuality is just, it's, wow, what a time to be alive. I mean, now they're just saying there's no such thing as bloody masculine and feminine, you know what I mean? You know, and confusing the hell out of them, well, especially children. That's who they're going after now. Not our
yeah.
generation, but
Well,
I don't think they'll be able to pull it off, but
no.
they're doing some serious damage. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got to come together as a species because these people who are promoting sort of like the whole kind of woke agenda, the ones at the top who are promoting it are completely hostile to all of humanity. Because
Yeah.
like the the trans community people might be at the top of the heap now, but they what they did to, I mean, I was a nurse in the mid 90s, mid 1980s, when the HIV thing was at its worst, and I've seen someone be murdered with AZT. Well, the HIV thing was like a dry run for COVID. It had and so that's what the world's power structures think of gay people, that they think it's fine to murder and torture them for profit.
Absolutely.
And that was the worst death I've seen in all my years of nursing. And I've worked in mainly elderly care, so I've seen a lot of deaths. And nothing was as bad as AZT death. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And so we really got to come together as a species, whether we're and there's a fascinating guy called what's his name, Bagemiha, Bagamill. I can't remember his first name. The Biological Exuberance is his book, and I think it's late 90s or something like that. It might be later, but he basically reviewed every single study on animal sexuality and gender that has ever been written, and the in nature you've got the same thing as in humans. Really, you've got a wide spectrum. Most animals are heterosexual, but some are bi, some are even trans. And there's a species of mountain goat that's even exclusively gay. Well, I think it's a goat or a sheep. But
that's fascinating. Yeah,
it's bizarre that the male sheep stay in one group, and they mainly interact with each other, apart from once a year to like have siblings and have procreate, and the females do the same. And there's certain birds that or have like kind of gay families or transgender families, but it's not a big deal in nature, but it exists. And so I think maybe this is one of the last things people will really start to wake up to, is that all the kind of promoted victim groups or promoted things. I mean, there's trouble in society, but the people who are promoting it just hate everyone. And
100%. There's some kind of malignant hatred for mankind.
And towards nature too,
and nature,
dolphins and whales,
and all organic life right thereafter. And it's interesting to observe, and I think it's the last 2 years have just proven it conclusively. I mean, it reminds me of a book I read, The Gods of Eden by William Bradley. I don't know if you know that book.
I've heard of it.
Where I think he was a war historian. If I read this book a long time ago, he's a war historian, but he studied, he's very interested in plagues around the world and things like this. And it was interesting that he noted that primarily that every kind of plague that happened throughout history, there was a lot of UFO extraterrestrial sightings.
I think I have heard him referenced by others.
And it's I mean, well, we're clearly someone's property. Someone doesn't like us. But I think there's but I think that's why. I mean, I guess with Reich's work and there's an emphasis on the left brain so much, not so much the right brain. Like, And I think that they keep you to the left because, you know, the right brain is the somatic intelligence. So, you know, you have it connects to the ancestral mind. And, you know, people, it doesn't matter how much you try and control people's speech and things like this. This is why they emphasize, there's nothing wrong with academia and scientific thinking. No way. And that's not what I'm saying, but it's just this imbalance of, you know, don't really go to those. That, you know, like Reich, I think really understood that the body is the shadow of the psyche, a bit different to Jung's take on it. And you know, I mean, you would have seen that through your clinical work. I mean, I have too, that the reactions people have and the emotion that can come out in people where they felt like, God, I haven't felt this feeling or this intense anger since for a long time. But, you know, things get buried at such deep levels. And that's the beauty of what I really loved about Chinese medicine, how pathology will do anything it takes to protect the organs. So it either store it in the bones or the blood or the skin. You know, this is the incredible thing about the body. It's got a whole level of consciousness that is beyond the left brain.
Definitely. It's got its own intelligence, and it works out the least the best solution it works out pragmatic solutions between different body systems, and it definitely works intelligently, and even at an energy level that you can feel that intelligence. Like sometimes the points will activate, or someone will say you'll put in a set of points, and someone will say, oh gosh, that point on near my knee, on the inside of my knee, is really activated. And you wouldn't have needled that point, but they'll point to an exact point. And so the points themselves have formed a kind of energy circuit, and have decided to utilize one area for a while and then go to a different one. So and perhaps that goes back in time to like the suppression of natural medicine and as witchcraft, because the suppression of shamanism, because that body. Well, Reich was talking about body intelligence, and I think if Reich had have lived, I think he would have gone on to talk about intelligence in the cosmos, but his work got cut off at that point. But I think that's why they wanted to get rid of body intelligence, just as they wanted to get rid of intelligence in nature and in the cosmos.